Hi, and welcome to Last Second Medicine channel. In this video, we will learn about pulmonary hypertension. We will see how pulmonary hypertension is classified in different categories, investigations for its diagnosis, and its treatment. Pulmonary hypertension is defined as a mean pulmonary artery pressure of at least 25 mm of mercury at rest and more than 30 mm during exercise, as measured by right heart catheterization. The definition may be further refined by consideration of pulmonary wedge pressure, the cardiac output, and the transpulmonary pressure gradient. Pulmonary circulation is basically a low pressure circulation because of its vast surface area, and normal pulmonary artery pressure is between 8 and 20 mm of mercury. As we know that for ease of understanding we divide circulation in right-sided and left-sided circulation. Right heart receives deoxygenated blood from whole body. This deoxygenated blood is pumped by right ventricle via pulmonary arteries. In lungs, the blood gives off carbon dioxide and takes up oxygen. This oxygenated blood arrives in left heart via pulmonary veins, from where it is pumped by left ventricle into aorta and so to whole body. If for any reason resistance develops in these pulmonary arteries, then right ventricle will have to pump with a greater force than normal to push blood in pulmonary circulation. If this situation of high pulmonary resistance persists, right ventricle gets hypertrophied to perform its function smoothly, just like we see left ventricular hypertrophy in systemic circulation. But over prolonged period, right heart may eventually get failed, leading to symptoms of right heart failure like peripheral edema. Coming on to clinical features, pulmonary hypertension presents insidiously and is often diagnosed late. Typical symptoms include breathlessness, chest pain, fatigue, palpitation, and syncope. Important signs include elevation of JVP with a prominent A wave if in sinus rhythm, a parasternal heave due to right ventricular hypertrophy, accentuation of the pulmonary component of second heart sound, and a right ventricular third heart sound. You may also be able to hear pansystolic murmur of tricuspid regurgitation and will see peripheral edema in cases of right-sided heart failure. Signs of interstitial lung disease or cardiac, liver, or connective tissue disease may suggest the underlying cause of pulmonary hypertension. Coming on to classification, WHO classifies pulmonary hypertension into 5 classes depending on the site of pathology. Group 1 include diseases of the pulmonary arteries itself. Group 2 include diseases of left heart which puts back pressure on pulmonary circulation and cause pulmonary hypertension. Group 3 include diseases of lung or chronic hypoxemic conditions which secondarily causes vasoconstriction in pulmonary vasculature to shunt blood to more oxygenated areas of the lung. Group 4 include pulmonary hypertension developing in response to pulmonary vessels blockage, for example by thromboembolism. And Group 5 include diseases leading to pulmonary hypertension that could not be grouped together in the above mentioned categories. Pulmonary arterial hypertension is Group 1. It can be primary pulmonary hypertension for which there is no cause found, and it can be sporadic and familial. Primary pulmonary hypertension is a rare but important disease that predominantly affects women aged between 20 and 30 years. Familial disease is rare but is known to be associated with mutations in the gene encoding type 2 bone morphogenetic protein receptor or BMPR2, a member of the transforming growth factor beta. Mutations in this gene have been identified in some patients with sporadic pulmonary hypertension as well. Then there is a subcategory in pulmonary arterial hypertension secondary to some systemic diseases, for example, connective tissue diseases like limited cutaneous systemic sclerosis, congenital systemic to pulmonary shunts, portal hypertension, HIV infection, exposure to various drugs or toxins, and persistent pulmonary hypertension of newborn. Group 2 is also called pulmonary venous hypertension, and the diseases which can lead to this type of pulmonary hypertension include left-sided atrial or ventricular heart disease, left-sided valvular heart disease, pulmonary veno-occlusive disease, and pulmonary capillary hemangiomatosis. Coming on to group 3, it is pulmonary hypertension associated with disorders of respiratory system or hypoxemia. And the diseases in this group include chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, diffuse parenchymal lung disease like idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, sleep disorders, alveolar hypoventilation disorders, chronic exposure to high altitude, neonatal lung disease, alveolar capillary dysplasia, and severe kyphoscoliosis. In group 4, pulmonary hypertension is caused by chronic thromboembolic disease, and the diseases in this group include thromboembolic obstruction of proximal pulmonary arteries, in situ thrombosis, or sickle cell disease. And the last group includes systemic disorders like sarcoidosis, lymphangiomyomatosis, blood disorders like chronic hemolytic anemia, myeloproliferative disorders, and extrinsic compression of central pulmonary veins. Out of all these causes, respiratory failure due to intrinsic pulmonary disease is by far the most common cause of pulmonary hypertension. But severe pulmonary hypertension may occur as a primary disorder, and which is the subject of discussion in the rest of this video. The pathology of this condition include increase in vasoconstrictors like thromboxane, endothelin 1, decreased vasodilators like prostacyclin and nitric oxide, vascular wall remodeling, that is endothelial and smooth muscle proliferation and chronic inflammation in vessel wall, and due to the increased resistance in the blood vessels and damage to the endothelium, this will lead to thrombosis in situ. Now coming to investigations, pulmonary hypertension is suspected if an ECG shows a right ventricular strain pattern, chest X-ray shows enlarged pulmonary arteries, peripheral pruning, and right ventricular enlargement. Doppler assessment of the tricuspid regurgitant jet by transthoracic echocardiography provides a non-invasive estimate of the pulmonary artery systolic pressure, which is equal to 4 times square of tricuspid regurgitant velocity. Echocardiography also assesses right heart functional status. Right heart catheterization is important to confirm the diagnosis of primary pulmonary hypertension, and it is also useful to assess pulmonary hemodynamics like pulmonary artery systolic pressure, pulmonary artery mean pressure, and pulmonary artery diastolic pressure. It can also be used to measure left atrial pressure by measuring pulmonary capillary wedge pressure, which will help in indicating the presence or absence of left heart disease as a cause. Right heart catheterization is also valuable to measure acute vasoresponsiveness of pulmonary artery to nitric oxide or epoprostenol, and this can thus guide further therapy. Coming on to management, specialist centers should direct the management of pulmonary hypertension. Excessive physical activity that leads to distressing symptoms should be avoided, but otherwise patients should be encouraged to remain active. Diuretic therapy should be prescribed for patients with right heart failure. Supplemental oxygen should be given to maintain resting PO2 above 8 kPa or 60 mm of mercury. Anticoagulation should be considered unless there is an increased risk of bleeding. Digoxin may be useful in patients who develop atrial tachyarrhythmias. Pneumococcal and influenza vaccination should be recommended. Pregnancy carries a very high risk of death, and women of childbearing age should be counseled appropriately. Now coming on to specific therapy. In those cases who show acute vasodilator response, high-dose calcium channel blockers is an appropriate mode of treatment. but this group of patients are usually lower in number. In those who do not show acute vasoresponsiveness, disease-targeted strategies should be focused on replacing endogenous prostacyclins with infusions of epoprostenol or treprostinil or with nebulized iloprost, blocking endothelin-mediated vasoconstriction with agents such as bosentan, ambrisentan, or macitentan, or enhancing endogenous nitric oxide-mediated vasodilatation with phosphodiesterase 5 inhibitors such as sildenafil and tadalafil. In patients taking sildenafil and tadalafil, nitrates should be avoided. And last, the guanylate cyclase stimulator riociguat can be used. In rare cases, selected patients are referred for double lung transplantation, and pulmonary thromboendarterectomy may be contemplated in those with chronic proximal pulmonary thromboembolic disease. Atrial septostomy, that is, the creation of right to left shunt, decompresses the right ventricle and improves hemodynamic performance. It may be used as a bridge to transplantation or as a palliative measure. Thanks for watching. I hope you liked this video and learned something from this topic. If so, please like this video, share with your colleagues, and consider subscribing to this channel.